the system.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Gaming the System, the podcast where three intersectional feminists examine gaming and games through a feminist lens. Today, I'm your host, Alex, and I'm joined by my friends Jem and Matt. Before we get started, if you want to support us, you can subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/gaming the system for some exclusive content. Or you can send us a one-off donation via PayPal to our email address, wearegamingthesystem@gmail.com. The other thing that interests me about the gaming sector, it's obviously games we know are huge technical achievements, but as we've also touched on, they're also very creative. And I wonder whether, as we've also talked about people's egos, whether it being such a creative project maybe managers' egos are also having a bigger part to play for gaming, because obviously, from the sound of it, this was very much Leslie's baby. It was his first independent project away from Grand Theft Auto. So perhaps that's got a part to play as well. And I'll touch on that with a later question too. But I wanted to also ask you about, obviously we've talked a lot about the deadlines for crunch, and deadlines are a massive thing within the gaming industry. There's so many games that come out every day. You'd think that it wouldn't matter if a game was delayed, but it's such a huge thing within gaming. So do we think that the pressure of a deadline for a game to be out, the pressure of the community wanting a game to be out at a certain time, does that contribute to these unrealistic demands on workers from the higher-ups, from the CEOs? Or is it all down to like the stakeholders just wanting money at certain times and things like that?
It's probably a factor of all of it, really. I think the customers want the products and the publishers want to get them out there and the investors want their money, and everyone wants it to be done as quickly as possible. And obviously the longer that somebody's working that somebody's working on a particular game, the less time they can be working on another game. And at the end of the day, there is a limit. I mean, we've talked about how game prices are just going up and up, but there are limits to how much you can realistically charge for games. So if a game takes 5 years to make and you can sell it for £50 a game, and another game takes 2 years to make and you're selling that for £50 a game, then obviously you want the one that's taking 2 years to make, because it's a lot quicker to do. You don't have to pay people for as long, and then you can start making the next game. So I think we're seeing a similar thing happening with television. Now that we've got all these different streaming channels and this kind of constant need for new. There are just so many mediocre TV shows and movies out there. I was looking for a movie to watch on a flight, and I was going through, and I was noting that all of the films that I was looking at were getting 5.5, 6 stars from different, from Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb and all of those places. And I'm like, why are there so many movies that are scoring so averagely? It's not that they don't have decent actors in. It's not that they don't have decent money behind them. It's just that as a society, we are accepting this, well, I mean, the sort of AI phrase is the slot. We're just accepting the slot. We're accepting it, and we're saying that's fine. And I think that's the problem, that games. And then if you have a situation where you have the games company that has somebody in it who is really passionate about it, then there's a conflict there, isn't there? Because they're being asked to do everything within too small a time frame for their creative brilliance, and with too few people and too few hours and all of that. And suddenly you've got this massive conflict between those things. So it isn't necessarily all down to, arsehole creatives wanting to ruin everyone's lives. It's about the fact that there is this massive conflict because we don't value the creative process and we don't value quality. There isn't space in the system to pay for that and to factor that in. Not sure if that makes any sense at all, but that's my opinion.
And quality isn't incentivized anymore. To the extent that it was, because the distribution of wealth up and out of the hands of the 99% it's too extreme to make the people who have all the money. Why would they care? It doesn't matter to them how successful something is, because the CEO of this and their executive, they've all got very well paid. They have generational wealth. They don't. So you can't have people in charge who they have absolutely no stakes in whether the thing is really good or not. If it fails completely, then they just go, oh, doesn't matter to me, whatever. And the Angry Joe show has has updated my views on the scoring of things, because they score things out of 10, and they point out that for most review places, if something's average, they'll give it a 7. And that isn't how maths works. 5 is average. If you've got between 1 and 10, 5 is average. That is average. It is in the middle. It gets as many things wrong as it gets right. That's where you should be placing most things. If it's average, then you go, that's it. But then when most things are, when you start thinking about it like that, if you think 7 is average, and then it means that 5 is slightly below average, when it really means that if it's a 7 to you, it should be a 3 or a 4. And then, but when you settle for things and go, oh yeah, this is fine, then they're going to go, well, in order to be relatively successful, we'll hit this shit level. And Alex, one of their team is called Alex, and he says that people who watched really big blockbuster things that are absolutely awful and the death of art, is saying, if you give this above average scores, then you are literally making all of art worse. Because if you give money to a shit thing and say, oh, it's fine, why would they try and make anything better than that? So yeah, so all the incentive, or the money distribution is too extreme. And then there's the evolution of microtransactions, because it's a lot simpler when it's just the only money you make from something is the buying of it. Whereas now, through the mobile game market, or Candy Crush things, where people, billions upon billions, more successful than 99% of games, and there's just the schizophrenic sort of like, don't know if that's the right word, but the absolute flightiness and man-childness, and it's like gods. They think of themselves as gods, and so they've got all this money and they don't have any, there's no grounding to them, and we're just all at the mercy of it. And we're not even getting, if they were pulling out awesome stuff as well, that'd be one thing, but then
I think oversaturation of Remarcus is definitely a problem. And yeah, I don't know. I think it's just there's too much choice out there, and not enough quality, as we say. But
that is a positive thing. Fortunately, with unlike with films, you can't make a AAA blockbuster as an independent filmmaker. But with game designers, you can spend, like Clair Obscur is that's properly the highest bar of like the cutting edge of game design quality, really. And they did that using almost entirely Unreal Engine, like third party assets, and making it look like you could literally buy it. And a lot of it was free stuff that comes with the Unreal Engine, and showing that you can do that. And so as long as we've got places like Clair Obscur and Baldur's Gate 3 going, like, along the way, there will always be people making fantastic games. And hopefully that continues to be true, because these small studios can make such fantastic things. I don't know if you remember when Baldur's Gate 3 came out, and it was a revolutionary AAA thing where it's this massive, hundreds of hours long game. There's no microtransactions. It raises the bar in every metric in terms of gaming. And the message from a ton of other AAA game studios was going, don't expect this to be the new norm, because this really isn't. This is a very unrealistic thing to be expecting of people, and not everyone really wants it. Rather than going,
that came to mind when you were talking about it earlier. Actually, I'm glad you mentioned that, because it's quite shocking how quickly they jumped on it as well. I don't expect this to be the norm.
Yes, and they were right.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch back on gender within the workplace, just to kind of wrap up this episode, really. Because obviously we've talked, and Jem, you touched on it at the start of the episode, about the barriers that women face in work, particularly compared to men. In management roles, obviously, poor management is not confined only to men or only to women. What sort of factors contribute to poor management? I was wondering about whether, obviously, toxic masculinity has a role to play within poor management, and whether that can affect women in management as well, whether they feel like they have to manage in a certain way, whether they feel like they ought to be micromanaging because of pressure from maybe other male colleagues, or they need to be seen to be managing or in control. And maybe there's something there at play. I don't know. I was just toying with the idea in my head. I don't know whether you have had any thoughts on it at all.
Yeah, I've thought about this quite a lot, actually, because I think that toxic masculinity is a good way to look at it. But my thinking at the moment is that a lot of our problems stem from patriarchal capitalism. And I think that the values that we hold as a society are dictated by those two factors. So it's about power, it's about strength, and it's about how you can value something, how much something is worth financially, which is one of the biggest problems that we have, because what we really need is an economy that actually recognizes the importance of care. And care is, caring for your employees and making sure that they are not burnt out in the work process, and putting in systems that allow people to work at their best and be as healthy as they can be in their working life. And I think that because of this sort of patriarchal capitalism driving everything, I think we are in an interesting moment. And I think it depends on how positive you are as to whether you feel that this is the death throes of patriarchal capitalism, or actually a sort of shift away from the attempts to move away from capitalism and the patriarchy, because I think we are seeing this rise of the tech bro culture, and that to me it's not entirely driven by this, but I think that the AI boom unfortunately came at completely the wrong moment for that shift, because what it's done is it's given these very I don't know, confused and not very socially adept men a huge amount of power on over our society. And suddenly you've got, Elon Musk, and I've forgotten everyone's names. So, you've got, feel free to chime
Mark
in.
Zuckerberg.
Yeah, Zuckerberg and Bezos and anyway, a whole bunch of these tech bros who are suddenly extremely powerful. I mean, they were already really blimmin' powerful, but AI has just shot that in, stratospheric. I mean, it's crazy, really. I think the only thing that could have done more damage would have been if Elon Musk had managed to get to Mars, and if him and Bezos had properly got their space race on, then I think we would be seeing a similar sort of tech bubble. And what it's done is it's given them a lot of power, and it's given them a superiority complex. It's shored up their superiority complex, where they genuinely believe that patriarchal capitalism is not only the best option, but it is the only logical option. And I've known quite a lot of techie men for whom that would be their argument. We will always end up here because this is the thing that makes the most sense. And I'm increasingly of the opinion that it isn't the only thing that makes the most sense. There are many other options, and Kate Raworth's donut economy is something to look at if that's something you would like to know more about. There are many other ways of approaching this. So yeah, I do think that we're seeing an increase in this machismo, and I do think that it borders on toxic masculinity. I do think that we are seeing this idea that, the aim of the game is to be the best, is to be the biggest, is to make the most money, and all of the other stuff, family doesn't matter, mental health doesn't matter, physical health doesn't matter. Taking a moral responsibility for your employees doesn't matter. They should be grateful that they've got a job. I mean, I don't want to bang on about Elon Musk too much, but I do think that his attitude to his children is a really, really good example as to why these people should not be allowed to have this extreme amount of power that they have. And so, yeah, I do think it is. I think it is a shift at the moment towards this, properly leaning into the patriarchal capitalism. But whether or not it's a sort of last-ditch attempt of those people to hang on to the power that they have gained since the Industrial Revolution, or whether it is a more permanent shift to those kind of old school attitudes, I don't know. That all depends on how positive I'm feeling on the day you ask me.
And we know that, I've never been a manager of people, but I think it is a very hard job to do well. There's plenty of people who are put in the position of manager and don't have the appropriate training or the confidence or the knowledge that they need to be competent at managing other people. So I guess my last question to you both would be, how can we help managers, particularly women in management, who feel like they're really overwhelmed and burnt out, to get help in becoming better at managing their teams or just themselves as managers? Because that, I think sometimes, well, it's not only women, it's men as well, does contribute to the problem of poor communication and these unhealthy working environments.
Sorry, can I interject on the toxic masculinity and misogyny thing?
Of course.
Because that's the like generally like the simplest split between in society is between men and women. You've got roughly 50-50, and then you've got trans people, non-binary people. But it's easier to go, right, men, you are higher in society than women. And then that's the initial split. And then what the right wing and the media and the capitalism and the ruling class have been doing more and more and more, and the advent of social media has allowed them to do this, is to whip people up into anger and sadism against other people and people who are different to them. And we can see that in the UK at the moment with all the England flags going up everywhere. They're going, oh, we just love our country. It's going, no, it's because you're saying you hate people who aren't white men. And that is what is going to... They want to spread that to everyone. They want to have people antagonized and angry with their fellow citizen. And part of the reason, and why toxic masculinity is so damaging, is because the misogyny of antagonism against women actually furthers the divide between them, because they're not on the same page. Right, we're in the same place doing the same thing. That's fine. Has to be, if there's a woman who is in a position of power above the average man, there are so many voices telling that man that he should be angry and that he shouldn't be happy with this, and that he should be happy, he should hope that that woman should have something bad happen to them, even if it makes the workplace a worse place. And it's another reason why we have Donald Trump in the White House, is because of misogyny in America, because both Kamala Harris and Hillary Clinton are woefully flawed candidates, absolutely abysmal candidates, but they definitely lost millions of votes purely because they were female. And that's the kind of detached from reality mindset that our leaders want to instill in us. And when they do get women in these positions of power, they want them, and they manage to find women who will be, even though they're in positions of power, they are still ruling on behalf of the men who are higher up. They are not behave. So like with, I think, Amélie Mauresmo in the French Open, tennis French Open, she's been the been the tournament director for several years. And it is just it's being run by the old men's club who...
She's essentially a puppet, but yeah.
Yeah. And then their absolute, I think, golden case scenario is, say, with, I think about this often, and fortunately they're not in power for the moment with the Conservatives, an incredibly diverse front bench of the Conservatives. For a Prime Minister, person of colour, women in high-ranking positions, you think, oh, that should be good. But then they are some of the most viciously racist people in their party. Suella Braverman, Priti Patel, Rishi Sunak, absolute, like, off-the-charts level diabolical racism. And that is what the white ruling class men want. And and another thing the ruling class love is laughing at us, laughing at the peasants fighting amongst themselves. And the misogyny and the toxic masculinity is, and I completely agree about the two sides of the coins, is patriarchy and capitalism, which is why those are the two things that we end up talking about the most. And that they feed each other. They're not separate things. And even though it's upsetting and frustrating to talk about, I'm so glad that we've got a place where we agree on it and we go, we're not crazy, are we? This is, I feel like there's so much going, I feel like I'm going mad that I'm the mad one. But then you need to find places and people where they go, this is mad, everything's insane. And then we can go, oh, okay, find those people and hold on to them really tight, because you need that in this mad world.
I think when it comes to how all of that impacts on the sort of management process in these studios is, I don't know who said it, but it's an excellent concept, is that you are promoted to the sort of your point of failure. So basically you just keep getting promoted until you're rubbish at your job. And one of the things that I've always thought was insane is that in order to be a manager, you have to just be good at whatever it is that you're doing. And that is a whole different skill set to managing people and managing systems and all of that. And I think this is where the problem lies. So somebody can be a really, really good computer programmer. It does not mean that they're going to be able to manage people. It doesn't mean that they'll have those skills. And I think that is where we have this problem within the workplace. And I think both men and women end up being promoted into management positions without being given the right support that they need in order to manage people. And I think that is where all of this stuff that we've been talking about with the patriarchal capitalism is the problem, because that says all you need to be the good at is the skills of your productive job. And managing people is not a productive thing. It doesn't produce anything tangible. Therefore, the value placed on those skills is much reduced. I don't think that companies are completely oblivious to it. I mean, I do think that people do recognize that managers need to have some people skills, but I think there is too many examples where people have just been promoted to a management role and given staff when they are not capable, they don't have that skill set. So I think it's really important that all management are given training to understand that their staff are human beings and to recognize the signs of burnout, to recognize the importance of having breaks, taking time out. You know, it's not okay for somebody to not take their holiday throughout the year. You know, they need to be taking that time. We know from a psychological perspective, from a mental health perspective, that prevention is better than cure. If you take lots of smaller breaks from things, if you deal with the mental pressure that can build up over time, if you sort of release those valves periodically, you're much less likely to have some big physical or emotional breakdown. You know, you're much less likely to end up with a back injury or, you know, having to be signed off for 2 weeks with stress. This is a positive thing for companies in the long run. You know, presenteeism is a massive issue, which is like people turning up to work and not really being at work because they are not in the right frame of mind to actually be productive. So yeah, I would make it, you know, I would provide training for people. It doesn't have to be like, you know, you're not asking them to go do a PhD, you know, just a little bit of training, a little bit of recognition that the well-being of yourself is important.
Trusting that they can take on that role as well. Putting trust in the person will help build their confidence as well.
Yeah.
I think often that is something that's not covered really by a lot of organisations, is that you have to help teams to believe in themselves and have trusting relationships between each other as well.
Yes, the communication has to flow both ways. It's. Yes. I mean, I said earlier that communication is really important in order to manage these scenarios. And I think that, as you said, Alex, you know, some people are anxious or feel that there's no point in them saying anything because nothing will be done. Yeah. So it's really important that the people at the coalface, topically, feel able to say to their management, this is not working. You know, we are not going to make this deadline. You know, we need another 5 people. And that the management are prepared to listen to that. And vice versa. It's really important that management say, look, you need to tell me if we need to hire some more people because we have to make this deadline. And if we can't do it, then you're all going to have to stay in every weekend, you know, and that's basically because otherwise all of our jobs are on the line. If you have those conversations, then you can, but as you say, you have to empower these
conversations to happen.
All levels within a business have to be empowered to feel able to have those honest conversations.
Mm-hmm.
I've been watching the Star Trek original series recently, and it's just the best. It's just the absolute best. And there are so many, it has the best answers to so many things. And they have management as well, because Captain Kirk is the captain. And he didn't just, unlike in the new films, where he's just this maverick, just lad, and he's just really cool and awesome. And that's why he gets to be captain. He was the top-ranking student at Starfleet Academy for years, then worked his way up the chain of command to be captain of a starship. And the gold is the leadership class of Starfleet. So you can have scientists, you can have security, you can have engineers, you can have navigators. There are all these specialisms, but there is an entirely separate one which is for command. And that's because it takes a massive amount of skill to be in command of a group of people. And Kirk, he knows how to do all the jobs on the ship to a certain extent, to know what it's capable of, what needs to be done. But then he's got his staff around him. He's got Spock, he's got McCoy, he's got Scotty, he's got Uhura, he's got Sulu, he's got Chekhov. He's got all of these people who are as expert in their fields, far more expertise than he has, but he knows enough about them to use these people in the right way. And that recognition of what it means to be in charge of people, to be managing people, is just completely left out of the equation, because it just needs to be right. Under capitalism, you don't have to care about these people. You just need to get them to do the thing, to perform the function, to make the money, and then that's it. And you need to be a really vocational thing as well, because people suck. People on the, like, in completely relaxed places can suck. But when you're in a high pressure work environment, and then you're managing people who are ill, people who are tired, people who are underpaid, people who have kids, people who have, like, elderly parents, the higher gamut of things. And if you're thinking, I just have to get these people to do the thing, then of course the end result isn't going to be very good. And so part of the course should be a Starfleet Academy course where you go and watch and study.
I think that's a fantastic idea. There we are. That's the answer to crunch culture. Just go watch Star Trek and you'll get what you need to do. There you have it. Thank you so much both for covering the topic with me. I think we've pretty much covered more than I thought we would, which is very exciting. And I'm always excited whenever we come to cover topics, because we always get a lot out of the discussion. So thank you. And if you enjoyed that, please let us know. And tell your friends as well. We'll be back every Thursday with another episode. So we'll see you then. And thank you very much for watching and listening. Bye-bye.
Bye.
We hope you enjoyed that episode of Gaming the System. If you want to support us, you can donate to us through our PayPal by sending it to wearegamingthesystem@gmail.com if you want to send us a one-off donation. If you want to donate to us monthly, you can subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/gamingthesystem. Until next time, bye-bye.